When you record it. Got it? Okay, got it.
She's looking for us. Let me go over there.
Got it, okay, Jazakumullah.
She's looking for us or what?
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Doctor, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. So I have some background noise on my
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you?
Let me mute it so it doesn't hear the background.
Yeah. I'm gonna get rid of the background noise in a second.
I'm not muted. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Is the audio better? Okay, alhamdulillah. So we don't have the background
You don't
noise.
have it yet?
Yes, alhamdulillah. All right. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين محمد المصطفى حبيب الله رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum everybody and welcome to our interview with the companions of Shaykh Hassan radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And today our interview is with one of the elders of our community, Dr. Khadijah Askari. And I just have a very, very, very brief introduction I would like to read before we welcome the doctor. She is our esteemed elder, Dr. Khadijah Askari, who was born Navon Sadella Hall to Fred and Marie Hall on July 20th, 1955 in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly and sisterly love. Alhamdulillah, her migration south began with her undergrad studies at Tuskegee Institute, which is now Tuskegee University. She then continued on to Morehouse University in Atlanta, which at the time was only a 2-year college, and she completed her medical studies at Emory University, settling down to live and practice in Atlanta in 1983. So, Doctor, welcome.
Well, thank you. Alaikum salam. I'm honored to be here.
Alhamdulillah, we're honored to have you. And for those who may be only listening to the first of our series of interviewing the companions of Shaykh, it's an initiative for us as younger people to know and learn about, the early times of Shaykh here in America, and to understand and know what you all as our elders, had put forth in time and effort with Shaykh, bringing us to this point, basically. It's a history lesson for us and a blessing for us to be able to hear from you. And, to segue into that, we know that, you came up in turbulent times, especially, with some of the things that were going on in Philly, especially with the Black people struggling for civil rights and dignity and so on. What was your introduction to that movement?
Alhamdulillah. Well, let me start off in the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. May the prayer and peace of Allah be upon the secret of the divine essence, the light of the divine essence, our Master Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the light of existence and our spiritual support. May the prayer and peace of Allah be upon our beloved and noble Shaykh Hassan Cisse, all those who love him, all the Sahabas, and all those who are continuing his legacy. Ameen.
Ameen. Ameen.
So growing up in Philadelphia was indeed interesting and a challenge. Like you said, it's noted to be the city of brotherly love, but it's one of the cities that is most divided racially than any other city, I think, in the United States. So I was introduced early on to the concept that we as African Americans in the United States had a unique obligation to seek the truth and to fight for the truth very early by my parents. Actually, they were very active in the civil rights movement. So they gave me the concept of always first putting God first, and secondly, fighting for justice, fighting for the things that would empower us as African people.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. So at that time in the movement, had you known about Islam? And do you remember what your perception of Islam and Muslims, there being a difference, was at that time?
Well, it's interesting because my sister was married to a Muslim. His name was Muntu. And, you know, he wore the turban and everything at the time, but he was a very talkative kind of guy. And everybody in our family just, you know, took him as being odd. We didn't actually, as younger children, pay that much attention to him. We loved him. We knew how kind he was and how sincere he was about his religion, but we really didn't have a concept of Islam and its pristine purity that he was trying to practice at that time. We were mostly exposed to the Nation of Islam. And so the Nation of Islam grabbed our attention because it sort of empowered people to be comfortable in their own skin, so to speak, to embrace our own Blackness, to try and empower our own communities. They pushed the concept of, you know, empowering ourselves economically. So I can remember as a young girl, like just in high school, you know, getting Muhammad Speaks and actually taking some of the images and using it as, you know, pictures. You know how you see these kids with pictures of rock stars and stuff in their room. I had pictures from the Muhammad Speaks that decorated my room because there were no other real images of Black people that were positive anyplace else. So we were first more conscious of our exposure to the Nation of Islam than we were to what people call, you know, the Sunni concept of Islam.
So did you have around that time any actions that stand out with the local Muslim community in Philly?
Well, at that time, not that much, you know, other than them, you know, going around selling the things, you know, selling bean pies and fruit and selling the magazines and those kinds of things. You know, I lived kind of sheltered life when I was young. We had a large family. I have 10 brothers and sisters. So we were a very tight nuclear family. I traveled to school every day, like about an hour to school. I went to the Philadelphia High School for Girls. And that's when I was more exposed to the community, so to speak. And at that time, again, it was sort of like the Nation of Islam. Inside of the Philadelphia High School for Girls, there was a young girl who was kind of like, who embraced Islam, I think around in the 11th grade. And I was in like the 11th grade, she embraced Islam. And she came to school and she was dressed all in black and in hijab. And I was never one for fashion in the beginning, but, you know, I was really interested in, you know, why she chose Islam. And when she talked about it, you know, that's what it made sense. And the thing that was stuck in my mind the most was just the concept that there was only one God. You know, because in seeking justice for people, we have to accept that we are one humanity, one creation. And so this concept that there's only one God really stuck out. And being raised in a Christian environment, my mother never really, she was always open-minded. So even though Christians accepted Jesus as God, I never got that impression from my mother. It was like, you know, he was the way to God. But there was always in the things that she taught us something even above Isa alayhi salam. So that wasn't a new thing to me. So it was not that hard of a transition for me to go from Christianity to Islam. It just seemed like, you know, an elevation in my understanding and an elevation in knowledge.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. So what attracted you to Tuskegee from all the way from Philly? Because that was a big leap.
Yeah, it was, well, my father's from the South. So, you know, he always trumpeted the South, you know, that the South actually had more going on than the North, because he used to say, like, in the North, you guys don't even know you Jim Crowed. At least in the South, we know we Jim Crowed and we know what we're fighting against. You know, you guys in the North are facing an illusion. So he always trumpeted the South. But my first real academic education was in the North. I started off at Harvard, and I had such an experience there with racism that it just flipped me completely. Like I wanted to go to an all-Black school. You know, I wanted nothing else to do with being in a white institution. I knew I wanted to further my education because I knew I wanted to be a physician. So Tuskegee was sort of like a logical choice to me. I wanted to go South, and I wanted to be at a Black school.
MashaAllah. So, right, and you know, this is my first time knowing you had any brush with, you know, the with the tri-state area or Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
So when you came to Tuskegee, was there any movement outside of the Institute in Tuskegee? And if so, I mean, did you get involved there?
Again, the biggest movement outside the Tuskegee that I was really aware of was sort of the Nation of Islam.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I really was more or less, when I left Harvard, for instance, you know, it was like such a shock that, you know, for me at that time, that such racism existed in the academic community, because, you know, you always get this sense that the truth is the truth, and that if you're a scholar, that you would be pursuing the truth. And there wouldn't be that shadow of this people really trying to, you know, be unjust and racist and lie. And that was just the opposite of what was going on at Harvard. So when I got to Tuskegee, I was kind of playing catch up. I, you know, just wanted to start over almost. So it's almost like I had lost a year of schooling, and I really crammed in my freshman year at Tuskegee. I took like, it was something like 30 hours. It was something ridiculous that I got away with taking, you know, like 30 hours, you know. So I took like 2 years in one year at Tuskegee. So I still finished college on time. So I was pretty much engrossed in just the academics. I happened to run into a history teacher who was very much conscious, politically conscious. And so when I went to, when I took his class, I kind of operated like, when I went to Tuskegee, it was like the academics was easy compared to Harvard. So, you know, I was just breezing through classes. So I got kind of lazy and lackadaisical. So I went through his class, and I remember he gave us the speech by Booker T. Washington, the Atlanta Compromise speech. And we had to analyze it and contrast and compare it with something else. And I just did this like really, you know, pseudo critique of it, you know, that I thought would get me an A, since I was getting A's and everything else. And he just tore my little paper up. He's just like, what is this? This is just crap you gave me, you know? And I was just shocked. His name was Fluker, Professor Fluker. So he made me realize that, you know, like, you're not going to get through here. It's not that I couldn't get through just floating through, but it was that he wasn't, I was selling myself short and selling my vision short and selling my people short to not give my best. So he kind of woke me up. And he was sort of a Pan-Africanist. So he introduced me to the concept of Pan-Africanism, Kwame Nkrumah, Frantz Fanon, J.A. Rogers, those kind of people. So I became avid in reading about Pan-Africanism and trying to understand, you know, that we as a people will not be free until Africa was free. And so that was sort of my first kind of like political or philosophical or organizational leaning. And in that concept, I ran across a man named John Henry Clark, and he gave a speech that really stuck to me. He said, you know, like the problems that we face as a people will never be solved until we get really connected to who our creator really is, who our God really is. And I think he might have been thinking more like traditional African religions, but that just blew my mind and made all the things that I had ever been exposed to about Islam just kind of like rushing back in. And so then I was on a quest to find out about how do you become a Muslim, and what is a Muslim, and, you know, what do Muslims really, really believe, and can I do it, you know?
So what was your real, you know, not just intellectual, but real physical, intellectual introduction to Islam? Like,
it was actually when I was a freshman in medical school. So I came to Atlanta to start I was a member of the charter class at the Morehouse School of Medicine. And because we were in a charter class, you know, they really inundated us with a lot of different things in our education. So not only were we studying the didactics of the first year of medical school, we had to train to be EMTs, because they wanted us to be kind of skill-wise above the cut, as well as academically above the cut. And riding an ambulance and seeing life and death situations, and you know, people just calling on Allah when they're on their last breath and those kinds of things, you know, really kind of made me think about how brief life could be, and how if I returned to Allah, or at that time to my Lord that day, would he be satisfied with me? So that kept running through my mind. And again, I knew that Islam had to be the answer to that, because it was the only religion that was saying that there was nothing greater than God, that there was only one God, and he was above his creations. And it's beyond a belief. I knew that to be true. So I had to come to find out what else do I need to do to put this as an actual thing in my life. So we were going over an exam, and at that time, what happens is like you study some things about a patient, and then you have to present it to your attending. Like you have to say like, this is a 36-year-old female who has heart disease. She came in complaining of da 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 da. And this guy was a surgeon. He was like, well, it's good she came here. And this was a really religious woman that I was talking about, her background. She doesn't smoke, she doesn't drink, she's pretty religious. He was like, well, good thing she came here because God couldn't save her, but I can. And I was like, this man is crazy. I was like, how did he get this arrogant? And I was like, I want to be a doctor, but I never want to be that arrogant. That I know for sure that it's only Allah who heals us. It's only God who heals us. So I was at Morehouse. So therefore, I was in the West End community.
Mm-hmm.
They had this little food truck. There was one by this brother named Jihad. He was from the West End. So he would be at the food truck and he would be selling you food, but he would be giving you dawah and stuff like that, right? So I went up to him and I said, I want to become a Muslim. How do you become a Muslim? He said, for real? And he said, yeah. He said, okay. He said, you have a car? I said, no. He said, okay. He said, I'm going to close up my truck and I'm going to take you to the West End. So he closed up his food truck and he took me to the West End Masjid. And there I met Imam Jamil. Mm-hmm. And I talked to him and I was telling him I want to become a Muslim. And, he was a very serious guy at that time. And he was like, when you become a Muslim, it's a very serious thing, as a woman, you're going to have to cover, and he went through all the things that, was required of being a Muslim, being modest, not being covered, and he was a little scary at the time, but, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this anyway. And so actually that same day, he said, okay, we're get ready to make, I think they were about to make Asr maybe, because it was sort of in the afternoon. And he said, just wait till after Asr and then I'll give you a Shahada. And so that's what happened. He gave him a Shahada. And I think at the same time, I took Bayat also to the Western community at that time.
Mashallah. Okay. So do you remember the date, the actual anniversary of what we call your Golden Jubilee? The
so
day
that
that you
was
took
like
Shahada?
August. It was August. I don't know the exact date, but it was in August and it was of 1980. But the exact date, I don't remember.
Mashallah. Alhamdulillah. Mashallah. So you were officially affiliated with the West End community, but I know that you were kind of all over when it came to like your actual participation in like the Muslim community. Like, you were at, Masjid, West End Masjid, but, you participated with things at Atlanta Masjid and other communities as well. Where do you say the majority of your like community level participation was?
Most of my community level participation was in the West End. That's where I went to learn Salat. Mm-hmm. That's where I went for Juma. That's where kind of like the sisterhood that I was affiliated with kind of developed. My affiliation with the Atlanta Masjid came because at the time that I took my Shahada, I had young children and I wanted them to have an Islamic education. They were being educated initially through homeschool through my sister Jaliwa. She had the Institute of Positive Education, which was one of the first Black Pan-Africanist schools started in Atlanta. And they were going there, and she was making a transition kind of back to Philadelphia, I think, at that time. So I had to find some other educational resource for them, and I knew I didn't want them to go to public school. So they became students at Claire Muhammad School. At that time, it was in Bankhead. It was the school that was in Bankhead. So
was it Masjid Arafat, I think?
I don't know what the masjid was called, but it was Claire Muhammad Schools, and it was the same women who were teaching who taught at the Atlanta Masjid. So
was that Brother Sabi, Sister Jeanette, and that was when Sister Jeanette was teaching back then, right?
And Sister Sandra Salim, those kind of things. They were teachers for my kids then.
Mashallah.
So they went to that school, and then when it transitioned to where it currently is located on Fayetteville Road, they continue to go to school there. And then as a physician, as a, medical student, I was, kind of like the go-to person if people have questions, like trying to increase or the access to appropriate medical care throughout the Muslim communities, wherever they were, whether it was Atlanta Masjid or the West End, or it was Master McManoon or other masters at that time, I would, try to hold health fairs there, get resources to those areas, just to sort of increase the access that we had to medical care at that time. And, people, I was kind of like the go-to person for if they were having medical issues, wherever they're going, like, can you call Dr. Khadijah and ask her, is this right? Or should I do this or should I do that? Even though I was still a medical student at the time. And so that's how I became kind of like affiliated throughout those communities.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. So did you have any interaction with, some of the people over at the Oglethorpe community at the time?
I did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
MashaAllah. Was it through them that you became introduced to the Tariqa, or was it through another means?
Yeah, it was through them that I became introduced to the Tariqas, specifically. Well, it was kind of twofold. So they're having children, their sisters, there was a group of children who were already going to Senegal. And they were going, Sister Safa's children were going there.
Mm-hmm.
And then Amina's mother, Sister Karima, her children were going there. I didn't know Karima, but I knew Safa. I was her kid's pediatrician.
Mm-hmm.
So when they were getting ready to go, she came to me for an exam. And I was like, well, where are they going? And she was like, they're going to Senegal. We have a sheikh over there named Shaykh Hassan. They're going over there. And I was like, well, are you going? And she's like, no. I'm like, well, who sends their kids all the way to Africa and they've never been there and then they're going? I mean, it was just blowing my mind. So, I was like, well, just being an advocate for children, I was like, I have to find out what's going on. Too many people are sending their kids over there. And, I can't be giving them an exam and sending them someplace crazy, like it's like I'm giving them the okay to go. So I kind of wanted to find out more. So she was like, well, ask Sister Karima, and, she actually lives over there. She's going over there with them. And then that time she was also affiliated, her husband was in the West End at a health food store. So I went and I met him. And I did get a chance to talk to him. This is
Sister Karima's husband, Brother Jamil, right?
Brother Jamil, right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I talked with him, and then he put me in touch with her. And I talked with her, and she just told me about the programs, like what they were doing. The children were learning Quran, and I was just so amazed, and she was just, she was like their dead mother, and they all stayed together at the Yellow House, and I was like, wow, that's fantastic. And I just thought that was just such a lot of faith that the mothers were showing in actually going there, and such a commitment on her part to take care of the children. And then
a lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't know Sister Safa. She had another connection to Senegal. She's real close friends with Brother Sufi's sister.
Okay.
So she knew of Ahmed and Yusuf having gone as well.
Mm-hmm.
So she was getting kind of from two different sides. So I mean, by the time she had heard, from Brother Jamil that he had taken Amina over there and left, basically left her there. I mean, she was good. She was like, well, I mean, if you can do it, if you do it, I'm comfortable.
Yeah, and then one time they came back for the summer. Some of the kids came back for summer, and actually it was Mariam, Amina's daughters, Mariam and Sabria.
Uh-huh.
And they came to, and I think they came to Atlanta about when Shaykh Hassan came and he visited Clara Muhammad School, and it's on Fayetteville.
Mm-hmm.
And they came first for a program, and they recited Quran. And so my oldest child, Abubakar, heard them, and he was challenged by them that these girls knew more Quran than him and could recite Quran. And he started telling me, I want to learn Quran. I want to go to Africa. I want to go to Africa and stuff like that. So at that time I was like, yeah, you just, he was very competitive against girls at Clara Muhammad, because his sisters are close in age to him. And so him and Badia had this really competitive spirit because they were both straight A students, right? And he hated, I think, that they were so close in age to him. And so he was very competitive with the girls. And so when these girls came, he was just on me like, I want to go to Africa. I want to study Quran. I want to go to Africa. I want to be a Hafiz. And I was like, okay, we're going to see. And so later on, I think probably that same month, Shaykh Hassan came to Clara Muhammad. And, just his whole charisma and everything is just really obvious. It was like he just floated into the school, And it wasn't that big a crowd, but it was enough of a crowd. And so you know, I asked him a question. I was like, why are you here? Why did you come? And he said, I came for the sake of Allah to see my brothers and sisters. And it just really touched my heart, because it's like, I was in the Pan-African movement at that time. Even as a Muslim, I was really a strong Pan-Africanist. And it was like, there was always this question of like, if we were stolen from Africa, why didn't anybody ever come looking for us? And he basically was telling me, I've come looking for you. And I've got the answer for you. So it was like, at that point, it was a no-brainer to me that I was going to go to Africa. Eventually, I was going to go there.
When did you visit Africa for the first time?
I visited Africa for the first time, I think it was 1996. I made the intention to make Hajj first. I had been talking to Shaykh Hassan, and my child had went over there. I had sent Kwame over there, and I had made the intention to go, but I wanted to make Hajj first. So I made Hajj first with the West End community through Rabatat. And when I came back from Hajj, actually, I got ill. And I ended up it was like some months later, I ended up in the hospital. And I was in the hospital, and I had to have a blood transfusion, and they were trying to get me to stay. And Kwame had called and told me he had malaria. And he was like, okay, Mom, I'm sick. And so if I die over here, it's okay. You know, just bury me. You know, don't bring my body back to America.
So much drama.
So, I mean, he had so much drama going. And I was like, what? So I'm in the hospital. I'm trying to reach Shaykh Hassan. I can't reach him. I think I called Kunte. I couldn't reach him. And I'm like, how? Because Kunte was kind of like my go-to person at some point for Kwame being there. I was sending my tuition and stuff to him. And I was like, as a mom, I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna get some straightening. My child's over there dying, and ain't nobody call me. Nobody didn't tell me nothing. You know, I pay my tuition every month. What's going on? So like, I took IVs out my arm, signed out to hospital AMA. I packed like at that time you could take 2 suitcases, 70 pounds each. And I'll never forget, because I had on like 3 layers of clothes, because I put nothing but IV fluids and medication in the bags, you know, because I'm going to did a crash course in tropical medicine to have everything I needed to treat this, to try to bring my child back to life. And I get on the plane to Africa. So when I got there, it was early in the morning, and Sheikh was on his way to Fajr. And so, and you know how that procession is, you know, he's just walking, and it's just like, and I'm just watching this, and it was very calming, because I was really anxious and upset, thinking that he was really, really sick, you know. So as this procession was going behind Sheikh, and it was going to the mosque, I just got a real calm feeling. I was like, well, whatever happens, happen. If he's not alive, it's okay. You know, Allah got the situation, you know, mashallah, I'm okay. Whatever it is, I'm okay. I'm not going to beat up nobody, because I was coming from Philly. I was coming to get some straightening, you know. I don't beat up everybody, Shaykh Hassan, everybody, right? But it just calmed me out. So when he came back, breakfast, I'm trying to see my child with no breakfast, but you know, I just was polite. I was like, no, thank you, I'm not hungry. And he said, okay, well, y'all take her down to the yellow house. So they took me down to the yellow house, and I walk in the room where Kwame's supposed to be, and he's not there. So now I'm convinced that they buried my child and didn't tell me, right? Nobody's in the room, right? I think you were in the other room, sleep somewhere, but Kwame was nowhere to be found. So I walk out the room, I take some deep breaths, and I see this big head boy hopping down the road, you know, with a brand new haircut, with a Bart Simpson t-shirt on. And I'm like, they look like Kwame's ears. I'm like, what? And it's him, right? And he's like in perfect health. Probably does. So he got a brand new haircut and all this time. I think that Suleiman's father had been over there and bought you all the t-shirts and stuff. And so I'm looking at him, and he's like, oh man, that's foul. Y'all ain't tell me my mom was coming. Y'all ain't tell me my mom was coming. I said, what do you think was going to happen when you told me you dying? You think I wasn't going to come? So of course nothing was wrong with him. So I had these 2 suitcases full of medicine. So then he tried to redeem himself, like, well, I just got better, but one of the boys at the school is sick, Mom. You need to see him. And so that's kind of how the clinic at the school started. I saw somebody at the Yellow House who was sick. It might have been you. Somebody in the Yellow House was sick. I think you were a little under weather and you ran away from me, but it was somebody in there sick. And then
I think that was malaria season, and we tried to tell him, look, bro, we go through this at least once a year. I mean, you're gonna be all right. You know, I know you feel vertigo and you got a fever and you feel cold at the same time, but just calm down. He was like,
Yeah. He was trying to get home because when he went over there, I had told him, you got a one-way ticket. You ain't coming back till you finish. So he was trying to get home. I was like, you went all the way to Africa, you are not coming back till you finish. So, you know, he was trying to like get back home. So nonetheless, then from there, I went to Shaykh and I was like, you know, I brought out this medication. If there's other people I can help, you know, I will be glad to help them. And that's when he said, okay, he told them to clear out one of the rooms in the school. And that's what we set up the first Shifa al-Islam clinic.
It was kind of
That wasn't the first.
a perfect storm of events because Shaykh Hassan had just completed that top floor on the school. And
I can't hear you.
Right when you all came, he completed that top floor of the school, you know, that big old space there.
Your voice is too low. I can't really hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said it was that time when you came, that was the time when he had just completed that top level of the school. Can you hear me now?
I really can't hear you.
Oh, really? Can you hear me now?
Vaguely.
I must be
I can't hear you good.
How about now?
Only a little bit. I can hear you better now. Whatever you're doing now, I can hear that.
Okay. So I was saying that it was like a perfect storm. Like right when you came, Shaykh Hassan had just completed that top level of the school, and there was this big extra space where you all, you know, hosted that first pop-up clinic. So, I mean, when you did that, what led to you, you know, like coming back and doing it the second year, and just keep on, you know, kept on doing it since then?
Well, after that, Shaykh Hassan had asked us to, you know, develop an initiative where we continued to provide medical care and to keep the medical activities sort of going. So we met in Tennessee with Kunte, one of the sisters from Tennessee, Abdurrahman.
This is Zakia.
Sister Shaki, Sister Aisha, and it was a couple other people there too. And so we met there and sort of developed a framework to kind of like revitalize or rejuvenate the African American Islamic Institute and to incorporate kind of that medical or health component.
MashaAllah. So
they helped develop, so we pulled together, you know, kind of that initiative and got, you know, other people involved, Dr. Jeffries, you know, Dr. Karima and other people. Sister Zakia had some physicians who were not Muslims who were willing to come and volunteer, and we kind of tied it to the Sister Cities program as well.
Can you talk about that Sister Cities program just briefly?
Well, that was kind of Sister Zakia's, you know, that was her baby. That it was out of Memphis. Memphis was supposed, you know, the information that I received that Memphis was longitudinally and latitudinally kind of aligned with Medina Bay and Cowlett, and so they became sister cities.
MashaAllah.
And so she would go around and talk to the different churches and organizations about Medina Bay being a sister city and try to get them to support efforts we have there. And she was a nurse, so most of that was geared towards the health initiative. And so she got like some of the churches to donate wheelchairs one time and different medical equipment. There used to be a group of doctors who came at least twice a year to participate in the activities of the clinic. So it was a really effective and helpful program.
I know even some of the doctors, I at least remember one, because I was young at the time and just running around between the school and Shaykh House. But I remember at least one of the Jewish doctors that came with you. He and his wife actually took Shahada from that initiative.
Yes. Those two doctors I think came through Sister Salama and Richard and his wife. I forgot what Richard's, when he became Muslim, I think maybe his Muslim name was Rashad. I don't remember what his Muslim name, what he changed it to. But they came through the clinic. We also started, when we wanted to do the maternity side of the clinic, we started, Sister Salama came on board and started to help develop that aspect of it. And we started bringing in midwives who needed to do clinical training. And they needed to come and be able to deliver babies and things like that. And so his wife was a midwife, I believe. So she came with Sister Salama to help coordinate the preceptorship for midwives who would come to the clinic, so that we could develop more the maternity wing of the hospital once Shifa al-Islam, when it was built, and they took the shahada. But Richard might have came even before that, because he was the kind of he was active in a group in Tennessee called the Farm. So they were interested in teaching urban youth how to grow food and things like that. So he was always willing to be of service and be of help to people who needed his help. And so he had come to Senegal to do that. And I think he embraced Islam first, and then his wife followed. She didn't want him to take a second wife, so she came. Yeah, get out of here. I can't hear anybody. Are y'all still there?
So what year did you actually transition the pop-up clinic into the brick and mortar Shifa al-Islam clinic?
Hassan, are you still there?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I saw them from Ashaki. There were and she's correct. We did have, it was in the same visit. So we did go on the roof of the school, and we did go in the other location, but where we got most of our traffic was at the school. And I think that was because the roof and other thing wasn't handling the capacity of the people that showed up. So, there were places that we set up at first, but where we ended up and going back repeatedly was at the school.
So what year did you all transition the pop-up clinic to the brick and mortar Shifa al-Islam in Medina?
Assalamu alaikum. Did Imam Ihsan drop off?
I think so. Okay, so I don't know if he lost connection or what's going on, but I can't hear him. Can you hear him, Jamila?
I don't. So he's with you, right? Maybe
Yeah, I
you could
just said, oh,
check on
maybe
him.
we go. Yeah, she just went to check on him. We were in different rooms, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Bismillah.
Since I have a cell phone, I guess I can pick it up and walk and find out.
I can see everybody.
You can see
on the
everybody.
camera. Yeah.
Oh, well. Hey, everybody. He can see y'all, but okay, so.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I'm sitting there I'm talking, I'm saying whole sentences, and everybody's like, oh, he's not there. We can't. Maybe he dropped off. I'm like, what is going on with this thing?
Hi, Kaya.
Okay. Well, yeah. Maybe we could just do it like this.
Okay, no problem.
This one.
Okay.
They're not gonna. Let me see if I can get on my own too. So I was asking, what year did you all actually transition the pop-up clinic to the brick and mortar building at Shifa al-Islam?
So
in Medina Bay.
In Medina Bay. So Shaykh Hassan had met with the brother who was head of the UNICEF at that time. I think I'm not sure what country he's from, but he was head of UNICEF. And he was really committed to helping Shaykh Hassan with his initiative. And so they drafted a proposal. A proposal was drafted for the actual building of the clinic. And it took about a year and a half to actually get it up and running. And so we had the medical services in the clinic for probably about 3 years, I think, before we actually had the brick and mortar of Shifa al-Islam, 3 to 4 years. before you got the brick and mortar of Shaykh Hassan. If anybody else remembers the exact date, that's great. So I'm sure people have better memories than me, but we went through the growing pains of actually just building the clinic itself and getting it up and running. And then we had a beautiful grand opening and that kind of thing. And so, alhamdulillah.
So when did you bring the rest of your children to the Bible? Because Abu Bakr, he was like the forerunner. He was like the
Yeah, he was a forerunner. So the girls came on occasions when I would come back and forth. So they came for short visits. And then I think it was when the twins were in their senior year is when they came to stay. So they were born in 76. So, they were about 16 at that time. So like in 92, 94, something like that, the girls came to stay and study. Cooper was about 13 and me and Badia were in the 11th. We're going to the 12th grade because I remember that because Badia was supposed to be the valedictorian of her class.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
And she was still at
No, at that time I had moved to Monroe, Georgia. So it was basically like a rural community that was like 60% white. So the school was mostly white. And so she was going to be the first Black valedictorian of the school. So, but if she left, so she had kind of finished all her credits. So she didn't really have to go to school the last semester of 12th grade because she had accumulated all her credits. So she would really just be taking electives. And so they were kind of like astonished that she was going to be the valedictorian, but there was nothing they could do about it. So when I put in for her to be able to take her electives overseas, which a lot of white people, they do that with their kids. So we put in that she was going to be taking, a cultural class and religious studies class and things like that. And they were more than happy to accommodate us because they said, well, if she actually goes, there's an attendance requirement to be valedictorian. So if she's not actually attending the school at that time, she can't be the valedictorian. She'll still have her 4.2 GPA, but she can't be valedictorian. So I said, okay, but then what do you want to do? She said, I want to go see Shaykh Hassan, so we left. So that's when they went over.
So we know that, alhamdulillah, Allah bless you to be able to support a lot of Sheikh's initiatives. And somebody's trying to connect me to the Zoom.
Okay.
But this is going to mean I'm going to have to move away from this.
I think you're connected now. I can hear you.
Yeah, so I got to go to a different room.
Okay.
All right. So we're back in effect. Can you see me?
I can hear you. So even though I don't see you, I think it's just with the results of the screen, but I can hear you.
Okay, here we go. So 1 second. Let's transition back over here. Okay, so if you can hear me, I'm assuming that my audio is fine. All right, so we know that, alhamdulillah, Allah bless you to be able to support many of Sheikh's initiatives from the school and so on with your money and your personal effort. And just to help people understand the range of some of the things that Shaykh was doing at home and abroad, can you talk about some of these initiatives and works?
Well, some of these initiatives were just so revolutionary, to say the least, that they definitely deserve mentioning. So aside from the school itself, he started an initiative to educate, Muslim women. So teach them a literacy program, actually. So there was a literacy program for Muslim women. There was an economic empowerment program for Muslim women. And then, I think most people know about the school itself. And then you had the health initiative. So those are the three big things that I think stand out the most for me, because they were so revolutionary. Nobody ever really took on the cause of Muslim women in Africa like Shaykh Hassan really did. He really wanted to empower women to be educated, to be able to, support themselves, support their families. He really embraced the concept that if that the revolutionary awareness of any society can be measured by the maturity of its women and the education of its women, and that if you give a woman economic empowerment, she's definitely going to take care of her family.
Mm-hmm.
And so he supported those kind of efforts and developed programs around those kinds of things.
Mashallah. Mashallah. And we know that you were blessed, alhamdulillah, to have traveled abroad with Sheikh numerous times. What were some of your most memorable trips with Sheikh?
So, you know, like, of course, all of them was memorable, you know, like, so, I mean, because what can you say? It's just like saying, like, you know, what Aleph do you like the most? The one before Alhamdulillah, the one before Allah, the one before Ar-Rahman. All of them were memorable. Every single one. You know, it's like one time when we went to Ghana, and it's like the whole country had turned out, and they all wanted to touch him. And this little boy, he couldn't have been no more than 11. He was like pushing everybody back, and he was like, "Don't touch him. Just to see him is enough. Don't touch him. Just to see him is enough." So, you know, just to be in Sheikh's presence is memorable. It's enough. No matter where you are.
Mashallah. Mashallah. Well, one of the trips that like stood out to me was when you all went on a state visit with Sheikh to Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
Yeah, of course. Yes, I remember that. So at that time, the president was, the capital was Abuja, which it is now, and had changed to Abuja. And so, you know, it was right after kind of like a military coup. And so a lot of people was thinking
Obasanjo was the president?
Obasanjo was the president then, yes. And so a lot of people was suggesting that Sheikh shouldn't go. But he went and was and at that time there was a lot going on within Nigeria between in the Muslim community, in the Muslim ummah, so to speak, because Nigeria is real divided. Like the Muslims are on one side, like, and the Christians are on the other side. And so within the Muslim ummah, there was kind of like a division that had sort of infiltrated that after a lot of the younger people had went to Saudi to study and came back and was kind of like attacking the Tariqa. And so they had asked Sheikh to come to kind of talk to the young people. And, you know, just his presence, I think, let people see that you can't have no doubt that, you know, the Tariqa Tijani is a spiritual path that will lead you to Allah when you see him. So all the arguments that they were trying to lever about, you know, why you shouldn't dhikr or why this was bitter, you know, he just tore all that down, you know, but in a very loving way. You know, he handled their questions, and when he left, you know, he had reunited that whole ummah. You know, the children, the young people were, you know, had a better understanding of their errors and corrected them. And so it was just a really beautiful experience.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. I mean, I know it's hard to like pick one and talk about them, but you know, I just wanted to touch
so
on
you know, like I mean, you know, like I mean, because some of the things are just personal. So like when we went to Morocco, well, so one thing that said in my mind, we went to Morocco. We went to Jordan. We went for a Sufi conference in Jordan, and it was a panel full of scholars. And one of the scholars, or what was it? Yeah, we were in Jordan, and a scholar from Malaysia stood up, and someone was asking him about the Sharia, and he was like, well, you know, the Prophet ﷺ said, you know, if even you know that he was trying to say that, you know, you have to temper the Sharia. So it's like, you know, the Prophet ﷺ said, you know, even if his daughter Fatima stole something, he would cut off her hand. Well, I don't agree with that. Sheikh stood up on that. You know, he said, I'm not going to be to nobody who said the Prophet said something and you're going to do something else. And you call yourself a scholar? Get out of here with that. You call yourself a Muslim? I mean, he left. He wouldn't even come back. The people was begging him come back. He was like, no. As long as that man is up there on the panel, I'm not coming. And so, and then and from there, from Jordan, we went to a lot of different places. We went to Israel, and so it was a very memorable trip because I got to visit, you know, the Masjid of Abraham, the Masjid of Dome in the Rock, and Sheikh led us in Salat inside that masjid. So for me, that was the most memorable trip of my life, of course, but you know, that was more on a personal level.
MashaAllah.
Mhm.
MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. So, and of course, the conversation about Sheikh, it can go on and it just doesn't finish, because talking about Sheikh is basically talking about, our connection with Allah, and Allah don't finish, so that conversation don't finish. But, time is time, and how that is. So we wanted to not, go too long and not take up too much of your time. But we wanted to end just by asking you, of all the myriad experience that that you could speak on, from things that you witnessed with him or heard firsthand, in his presence, or and so on, what would you describe as your most indelible, maybe life-changing experience with Sheikh?
Well, it was really the first time that I met Sheikh, was that life-changing experience for me, because, everything I saw him do from the first time I ever saw him until, to the last time I ever saw him, was just an embodiment of the Prophet ﷺ. And he always embodied his love for Allah and his love for his Prophet. And it was clear that his maqam was just above everyone of his time. And so, from the first time I met him, that just was clear to me. I don't think you could be in his presence and be really open to Allah's grace and mercy and seeking Allah and in love with Allah and love his Prophet and not understand that and see that. It's just obvious from the first time I met him. There's never been a moment in his presence when that wasn't the case. So I don't know how to explain that. So there is no one moment, because every moment it's like every moment is a moment with Allah. So how are you going to rate that? What are you going to do with that? There's nothing you can do but say alhamdulillah for every moment.
Alhamdulillah. 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 So we're going to allow for, maybe one or two questions via chat, if you will. Otherwise, we're going to, just stop the interview here and thank you for your time. It's a Sunday. In America, it's a day for rest because, everybody working, and, so you don't want to take up too much of your time. We want to thank you for giving us your time and sharing with us your experiences. And if anyone has, any question they would like to ask, Doc, go ahead and please put it in the chat. And give a second or so for that. And if, whoever joined wasn't aware of it, alhamdulillah, out of, her children that she brought to Senegal, alhamdulillah, Sayla Kubra, who finished Quran, everybody else, alhamdulillah, they came, they studied and they put in effort. But Allah bless, Kubra, Sayla Kubra to finish. So alhamdulillah, that was, some of the results of Dr. Khadijah's efforts with her children there. Of course,
yes, we had Kubra, we had a Majida finished, and we had Omar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and then in her grandchildren, she has Umar finished Quran. What year did Umar finish? Was that Lord? I try to keep a good record of this. I can't remember him when he finished because I was, of course, long gone. Do you remember the year Umar finished?
I don't remember the year, but he's now 22, and Omar finished. He was like maybe 18, and he's now 22. No, he wasn't 18. I'm sorry. He was about 16 when he finished. He's now 22, so like 6 years ago. So
yeah, he finished in the Mawlid of 2012.
And Majida going to Senegal was definitely part of that legacy because your whole having taken Shahada and going to Senegal and sitting on Ruka, that was a big introduction for Majida's mother, Sister Geneva, your sister.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. For a lot of people in my family, there's a lot of another one of my nieces, Min Shaykh Hassan, took their Shahada. So, it's the barakah of Shaykh Hassan just always has a phenomenal ripple effect. It's the barakah of Shaykh Hassan. The barakah of Shaykh Hassan has ripple effect to today. Even there are people who I met when I was incarcerated. So I've just been home a couple of months, but during my incarceration, people took their Shahada and then took their Tariqa. And they know about Shaykh Hassan and they want to make Shaykh Mahi. So the barakah of Shaykh Hassan just, it doesn't even stop. And like I remember when I got sentenced, the judge said, like, I know that the BOP, the prison system will never, wherever you go, it's never going to be the same. I said, and he's exactly right, because the books of Shaykh Hassan are now in that prison. The books of fighter publications are now in that prison. So somebody has the opportunity to pick them up and read them. We have sisters coming out there who are waiting to go to Senegal, who have taken their Tariqa, who talk to Shaykh Mahi by phone. They talk to people. There are people calling me, who these sisters now, some of them are out. They're talking to their husbands or their brothers who may be incarcerated, and they're calling me and saying, can I get that book? Can I call Shaykh Mahi? So the barakah of Shaykh Hassan never stops. So it never stops.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
And I see that the Ruhul Adab has started
we
like
have two
a prison effort.
Alhamdulillah. Yes. Alhamdulillah. So we had two responses via the chat. One was just Dr. Samia sharing with us that Umar finished back in March of 2012 during Maulid. So that's when your grandson had completed. And then we had a question from Dr. Zakaria Wright. He asked, and I know this one may be a difficult one too, but he said, can you speak on any of the karamats that you witnessed firsthand with Shaykh Hassan?
The first one that comes to my mind, I'm not even allowed to speak on it, Zachariah. So I'm gonna have, and if I can't say that one, right now I can't even say. Well, I can say one that's less than that. The biggest one I can't speak of, but I ran into some trouble when I was going back and forth to Africa. So they were trying to, the IRS was trying to come at me for something. I don't even know what it was, right? And so I was telling Sheikh about it. He said, okay, give me the papers. He gave me the papers. A month later, the IRS shut down in the United States. I don't think it was like right after the prayer, not even a month later. He made the prayer. The next day they come and said, you don't have to come back. The IRS is shut down. Wallahi. I don't know how, if anybody remember that, but the IRS in the United States shut down. And when they opened back up, they told me, oh, everything's been cleared up.
And I had deliberately scratched this question off of my interview because I was like, I don't know if you're going to be able to share that stuff. But alhamdulillah, shukran for that question, Dr. Zakaria. And we have one more from Dr. Jamila. She asked, did he transform or enhance your understanding of the role of women in Islam or clear up any misunderstandings regarding your understanding of, women or their role in Islam?
So like I said, Sheikh was revolutionary in his stance to educate Muslim women and to help people understand the position they have in Islam. So the position of Muslim women in Islam, like, really doesn't have to be elevated because Allah already elevated it, because he said, paradise lies at the feet of your mother. So it doesn't really have to be elevated, but people lie about it and have a misunderstanding about it. So just because he taught me Islam, basically, he helped me understand Islam, period, better. Yes, he helped transform that concept. But, we as American Muslim women, we go into it with a with a whole different paradigm. You know, Shaykh Hassan used to say, he described the Muslim American woman as that we're like water going uphill. We fought for our Islam. You know, he used to admire that. He said, we fought for our Islam. We're like water that went uphill. So we came into it with a revolutionary spirit, so to speak, for the most of us did. So we didn't come in it to be told to be quiet and sit down and things like that. And he didn't expect that. He didn't even want that from us. And often when we traveled and things came up, he would intentionally have me respond to different things or say, like, I think you should answer that question to make people acknowledge the role of Muslim women in Islam. He would intentionally do that. And, you know, because I would say, like, Sheikh, they need to hear from you. He's like, no, I want you to say it. They need to hear it coming from a woman. I want you to say it. Those kinds of things. So definitely just by his efforts and his actions, he showed people that Islam elevates anybody's status, especially women. What other religion? Just the fact that as a woman you can prostrate to Allah 5 times a day, that elevates you. But you know, so the programs that he had, the things that he did, definitely elevated the status of women. You know, when we traveled to Saudi, I remember we went to Saudi for a Hajj one time, and it was time to break fast because it was during Ramadan. And I don't know what was going on, but whatever reason, we were in the same place eating. You know, it wasn't like the women were separate from the men or something like that. And this man like just cut in front of me, and Shaykh Hassan was like, hey, come here. You're not gonna do that. You know, he just didn't allow women to just be treated any kind of way. And one of the things that I always told people, when Shaykh went to pray in the morning at Fajr and left the masjid, the first place he went was to his mother. Every day. And if she was asleep, he stayed there till she woke up to find out, what can I do to serve you today? Now, if that don't teach you the status of women in Islam, I don't know what else will teach you that.
Alhamdulillah, Doctor, again, I want to thank you for you giving your time and sharing, you know, from your experience with Shaykh Hassan and your experience in life in general. And of course, this is just a very, very, very brief introduction, you know, for us to you. And hopefully, you know, in the future, we'll really be able to get, you know, an in-depth, you know, history from you, inshallah. And we hope that with all the elders, you know, these interviews are just, you know, just a brief introduction. So inshallah, we forward to hearing from you again in the future, inshallah. Is there anything that you wanted to share with us before
Well,
we close out?
May Allah reward you for your efforts. May Allah reward the Roho Adab community for their efforts. You guys are doing a beautiful, beautiful job. It was very inspiring. And may Allah continue to bless you and reward you. And may you continue to preserve and elevate the legacy of our beloved and noble Shaykh Hassan Cisse, of Shaykh Ibrahim Niyaz, and the Prophet, and Allah. Alhamdulillah.
آمين آمين الحمد لله الحمد لله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقدار العظيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. شكرا everyone for coming out, and may Allah bless everybody. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله.
Hey, how you doing?